All rise, voulez-vous le verre? The International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals is now in session. L'audience du mécanisme international appelé à exercer les fonctions résiduelles des tribunaux pénaux est ouverte. Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Registrar, could you call the case, please?
Good morning, Your Honor. This is case number MICT-15-96A, the prosecutor versus Jovica Stanišić and Franco Simatović. Thank you, Your Honor.
I thank you, Registrar. Before proceeding with the appearances of the parties, I note that Mr. Stanišić and Mr. Simatović and counsel for Mr. Stanišić are participating via video conference link pursuant to Rule 69 C subparagraph 2. Now for the appearances, counsel for Mr. Stanišić.
It's Wayne Jordash for Mr. Stanišić, Your Honor.
Thank you. Are you accompanied by anyone else?
No, it's just me alone.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stanišić, can you hear the proceedings in a language that you understand?
Da.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can.
Now I turn to counsel for Mr. Simatović.
Dobro jutro, časni.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. On behalf of Mr. Simatović, Vladimir Petrović, and I, Mihailović Bakrak, are present in the courtroom today. Thank you.
Mr. Simatović, can you follow the proceedings in a language that you understand?
Časni sude, čujem sve.
Your Honor, I can hear everything.
I thank you. Now I turn to the prosecution appearances.
Good morning, Your Honor. Barbara Goy, together with Lorna Bolton and our case manager, Janet Stewart.
Okay, thank you, and good morning to you too. So today's status conference was scheduled by an order signed by me on the 12th of May 2022 and is taking place within the 120 days of the last status conference, which was held on the 1st of April of this year. Let me reiterate that under Rule 69B, the primary purpose of a status conference in the appeal phase is to allow a person in custody pending appeal an opportunity to raise issues in relation thereto, including issues regarding his mental and physical condition. I will begin today's hearing with a brief overview of procedural updates, and then I will turn to appellants, Mr. Stanišić and Mr. Simatović, to see if there are any issues they wish to raise within the scope of Rule 69B. The prosecution may, of course, make remarks thereafter. So, recent procedural history. As for procedural developments, I recall that there are two pending motions before the appeals chamber seeking admission of additional evidence on appeal. One was filed by Mr. Stanišić on 8 December 2021, and the other by the prosecution on 17th March 2022. Briefing in respect of these motions is complete, and the appeals chamber will address them in due course. Now we will hear from Mr. Stanišić and Mr. Simatović through their counsel, if they so wish, or personally as regards their detention. Mr. Stanišić and Mr. Simatović, or counsel, if you prefer to go into private session at any moment, please let me know and I will decide accordingly. I'll start with you, Mr. Stanišić. Do you have any issues related to your detention conditions, health, or any other matter relevant to this status conference?
Your Honour, a couple of comments, and then Mr. Stanišić would like to address you on some health issues, but that, with Your Honour's leave, could be done in a private session because it deals with private medical issues. As for what I would like to say on Mr. Stanisić's behalf, I would like to say the following, and it's relevant to Mr. Stanisić's health as a whole. I think we were, or he was, particularly surprised that the judgment in his case is not expected until June of next year. As Your Honour will appreciate, that will mean these proceedings have been ongoing effectively for 20 years. Understandably, that has an impact on a convicted person's or any individual's mental health. A 20-year trial process is, I think, even in the history of international criminal law, unprecedented. It's particularly concerning because Mr. Stanišić is not, as Your Honour will appreciate, a well man, and as I said, he will address you about that in a moment. But it's particularly concerning because his physical complaints are very much linked to his mental state. And as I say, I think 20 years for any person, healthy or otherwise, is a burden on somebody's mental state. So I raise that because I do respectfully urge the court to take these matters into consideration when setting the timetable for the judgment in this case and for the oral hearing that we must have in this case. If Mr. Stanišić is acquitted at the appeal stage, and I appreciate that the court's ruling thus far is that such consideration is speculative, but if he is acquitted, that is a very long time to have spent in custody and a very long time to have spent undergoing these rigorous and arduous proceedings. And so I do raise it, and I do urge the court to take it into consideration when setting the timetabling of the oral hearing and also the delivery of the final judgment. I'll stop there and let Mr. Stanišić address Your Honour as to the particularities of his ongoing health conditions and treatment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jordash. I can address a couple of the points raised by you, but more importantly, I wish to make it clear that this is the last time you're seeing me presiding over this case. As you know, probably today, if not today, tomorrow, the Secretary General will announce who my successor will be. It's already known who it's going to be, but automatically my successor will step into my shoes as presiding judge in this case pursuant to our statute and rules. I will, of course, convey to my successor your concerns, but henceforth it will be up to my successor to take. All I can tell you is that we have been, together with Chambers, working round the clock on this case to accelerate it as much as possible, and that the estimated date for delivery of judgment being next year, this time next year, is really the best of the best that we could aim for. I was for a moment worried that the change in the presidency could bring about some or impact on the timeline, but I can assure you it's not going to impact on the timeline. There will be not only a change in the presidency, but also in the composition of the appeals chamber, because as you know, my successor is not on the bench, so someone has to step down. But again, I can assure you that this will have absolutely no impact on the timetable that we already set for this case a long time ago. I prefer at this stage not to comment on the rest because, as you can imagine, I mean, my successor may have her own ideas about how to proceed and also about the readiness, etc. I can tell you that I have had discussions with chambers to see more clear about any possible impact, and I'm assured that there will be no impact. There is an estimated date for the oral hearings. At this stage, since someone else is stepping in my shoes, I prefer not to say exactly what the estimated day is. It's something that, of course, has to be discussed by my successor in chambers, but I don't imagine there will be any changes. And the day that we have in mind will certainly not impact negatively on the estimated date of delivery of the judgment. So where I disagree with you is that having to wait another year for the delivery of judgment is too much. I know that from an accused point of view or from an appellant's point of view, I was a defense counsel like you are, that is always a hot issue, and there are always complaints, but the case is a complicated one. The appeal is a complicated one, and we are making sure that everything is covered and that the judgment will deal with all the grievances that have been brought forward. Having said that now, and also I need to remind you that for a long time your client was on provisional release. So, but forget that, because at the moment it's the actuality that and the present that is certainly more on his mind. Now we will go into private session, and I'll give the floor to your client. As soon as you tell me that
We're back in open session, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stanišić, having dealt with some of your problems in private session, is there anything else that you would like to raise now that we are back in open session? Any concerns?
Hvala, časni sude.
Thank you, Your Honor. There is nothing else I would like to say.
Mr. Jordash?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. I turn to Mr. Simatović now. Mr. Simatović, do you have any issues related to your detention condition, health, or any other matters relevant to this status conference? And again, I repeat what I said earlier, that if there is, if you or your counsel feel the need to go into private session at any time, to please let me know. I see Mr. Bakrach standing. Yeah.
Da, časni sude.
Yes, Your Honor, I do apologize. But my plan before the status conference started was for my colleague, Mr. Petrović, and myself to get information about certain procedural issues to determine how the proceedings will continue. And Mr. Simatović will then say what he has to say about his health in private session, since you have now provided us with a detailed explanation of the current situation. My plan falls through. I think I have understood the situation, and at the moment I have no questions relating to procedural issues. So we will wait and see, and then see if there are procedural issues to be raised. If Mr. Simatović so wishes, he could provide you with information about his current health condition in private session. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Bakrach, let's go into private session once more and give the opportunity to Mr. Simatović to explain his concerns.
We're in open session, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We are back in open session. No further comments from Mr. Petrović or Mr. Bakrach? Nothing?
Časni sude.
Your Honor, I apologize for asking for us to move into private session. I did so because I thought that perhaps Mr. Simatović wanted to say something in private session rather than in open session.
Prosecution, do you wish to comment or make remarks of any kind?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to come back to the estimated date for the hearing. Obviously, we've heard Your Honor and the explanation. We just were wondering whether Your Honor would be in a position to give a rough indication of when the hearing would take place. Anything that would help us would facilitate the planning, obviously. So any indication would be appreciated. Thank you.
Ms. Goy, you're putting me in a little bit of a difficult position, because let me explain it in very simple terms. Of course, during past months, I have been in close contact with chambers following the progress in the work and the shifting of dates at times. And there is an estimated date. But to be honest with you, to declare it today, when I know that this evening probably the new president's name will be made public, and when I know that I will be discussing with her and that she will take over and follow up with chambers, maybe with some fresh ideas or different ideas or different suggestions and resulting in different dates, etc. I prefer to stay put. What I can tell you is that we had initially a date which had to shift because of the exigencies of the work in chambers. But chambers is one of the most efficient branches, sections of this institution. Their work is terrific. And sometimes estimates change from one day or from 1 week to the other. So nothing is written in stone at the moment. I prefer not to state what the date or the estimated date for the oral hearing is. Of course, what I needed to know when I was discussing it with chambers is whether they are allowing themselves enough time to guarantee that there will be no delay in the delivery of judgment. And that guarantee I have. But again, that guarantee now has to be given to my successor, who may approach chambers in a different manner, to the extent that we could have another change in the date for the oral hearing. So I would leave it at that. But what's more important is the delivery of judgment. The delivery of judgment date will not be impacted by the change in the presidency and by the change in the composition of chambers, because we have not yet arrived at the stage where all the judges are involved in deliberations and all that. That will come later, and usually the judges will wait for the oral hearings with a lot of anticipation, because that is basically what will make or break an appeal. Thanks. Any further observations or remarks? I hear none. As I said earlier, this is the last time I am seeing you as presiding judge in this case. I thank you because these last 2+ years we have worked together very well, and your cooperation has been greatly appreciated, including the good behavior of and demeanor of your clients, which I also anticipated. I'm sure that the case will continue with the same momentum that we have tried to secure for it, and that in a year's time from now, you will have a final decision by the appeals chamber. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Your Honor, may I just wish you all the...
Yes, Mr. Jordan.
Your Honor, may I just wish you all the best for the future, and if you are retiring, and I doubt that, but if you are, a good restful period after a long and valuable contribution to international criminal law.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. What makes me think and think and think is that many others, almost everyone that I have been speaking to, doubt that I am retiring. And and in fact, I tend to agree with you that I am not retiring. I'm only stepping down from being president of this institution that I love. I will remain as a judge. I'll be frank with you straight away. I don't know if I will remain as a judge in this case. That will not depend on me. It will depend on me as well, but it will depend on the new president. But it means that one of the 5 judges will have to stand down, and there I will be asked for my input. So I don't want to anticipate anything, because it's not just what I want, but it's also what the new president wants. But I appreciate your words. You know, I leave this institution as president with one important belief, and that is how wonderful the staff of this institution is, and how cooperative the lawyers that I have had to deal with have been. You are amongst them, Mr. Jordash, and you too, Mr. Bakrash and Mr. Petrovic. Like so many others, in 21 years, you can imagine, I had difficult moments in trials and in appeals, all solved in the most practical and pragmatic way. And it happened because I always had great lawyers, both on the side of the prosecution, of the office of the prosecutor, and on the side of the defense, irrespective of where they were coming from. I dealt with French, Italian, American, British, all sorts of lawyers coming from different legal backgrounds and traditions, and we always worked so well together. So I thank you for your cooperation, and I am sure that other judges share my opinion, because, of course, I discuss with other judges. Thank you very much. The hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
All rise for the Releveur.